over 3,000 years ago, the Jewish slaves in Egypt were instructed to partake their first Passover meal. They were also instructed to take blood and sprinkle it on the doorposts of their homes. Exodus 12, 11 through 13 tells us a little bit more about that. Eat the meal with urgency, for this is the Lord's Passover. On that night I will pass through the land of Egypt and strike down every firstborn son and firstborn male animal in the land of Egypt. I will execute judgment against all the gods of Egypt, for I am the Lord. But the blood on your doorposts will serve as a sign, marking the houses where you are staying. When I see the blood, I will pass over you. My mother-in-law refers to herself as a completed Jew. She was born to Jewish parents. She was raised in the Jewish faith. But since then, she has come to a saving faith in Jesus Christ. Therefore, she's completed. One year, she invited my family over for a Passover Seder meal, and that confused me. I thought, aren't you a Christian? When Jesus came, he kind of negated all that old stuff, didn't he? Have you reverted back to Judaism, or is your theology flawed or something? I was a little nervous about going. I didn't want to go, but there's an old adage, happy wife, happy life. And I would add to that expression, happy in-laws or else. So I went, and I'm glad I did. I learned so much. I learned that the Passover celebration is as much a Christian celebration as it is a Jewish one. And nowhere is the symbolism more remarkable than in the Passover Seder meal. During the meal, I learned a lot about the significance, and through my studies afterwards, I learned even more, and I want to share some of that knowledge with you today. So we're going to focus on three elements of the Passover Seder meal, the three elements that were in the very first Passover Seder meal, the lamb, the unleavened bread, and the bitter herbs. And we're also going to talk about some other elements that have been added by Jewish custom over the years. It's important to note, however, that the Jewish observance of the Passover Seder is identical to the Christian observance of the Passover Seder, but the symbolism is a bit different. So we're going to learn about that together. The first element I wanted to talk about is the lamb bone. The lamb is the central component of the Passover meal. God was very specific about what this lamb had to be. It had to be a lamb without blemish. It could not have its bones broken. Although on the original Passover they were in a rush to get out of Egypt, God did say in the future you need to select your lamb 5 days before you slaughter it. And also the whole Passover Seder meal was supposed to be shared. This lamb, if it was too big for your family, you should invite another family over so you can all share it together. So these are very symbolic for the Christian, right? Because Jesus was the spotless lamb. He was without blemish, without sin. And he never had his bones broken. It was common in ancient times when someone was being crucified that their legs would be broken. It would make it harder for them to breathe, and it would make them die sooner, and the Romans never did that to Jesus. Also, Jesus entered Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, 5 days before he was crucified, just like the lamb was to be selected 5 days before it was slaughtered. Also, the good news of Jesus Christ is meant to be shared with friends and family and neighbors, just like this Passover lamb was meant to be shared among families. So this is the lamb, the central component of the original Passover meal. The next component, which is indicated in Exodus 12, is the maror. It's a bitter herb, and it's meant to symbolize the bitter bondage of slavery that the Jews experienced in Egypt. But for the Christian, it also symbolizes the bitter bondage to sin that Jesus saved us from. So we've spoken about the lamb and the maror. The third component of the original Passover Seder meal is the unleavened bread. This is a picture of matzah. If you look closely, you can see there's little holes. That's to keep it from getting brittle, I think. And also, because those little holes are in it, when you bake it, it gets a little more discolored between those holes. So you can look at this matzah and see stripes and piercings, right? And this is especially significant for the Christian, because by his stripes we are healed, and he was pierced for our transgressions. The symbolism here for Christ is very, very apparent. So we've talked about the three main components of that first Passover Seder meal: the lamb, the maror, the bitter herbs, and this unleavened bread. But there have also been some components and some elements added to the Seder meal over the years. One thing that's been added is this egg. It's a hard-boiled egg. It's meant to represent the hardness of Pharaoh's heart. There's something called haraseth. It's a sweet apple kind of dish, and it's actually the one thing I enjoyed in the whole meal. But it was quite good, and it represents the mud, because it kind of looks like mud. It represents the mud and the brick and the mortar, all that stuff that the Jews in Egypt had to deal with when they were slaves. There's also some parsley and a bowl of salt water on the table. That's meant to represent the hyssop that was used to sprinkle the doorpost with the lamb's blood. And there's also a cup on the table that's filled 4 times throughout the meal. And according to Roy Lesson in his book, I Am, those 4 cups are the cup of sanctification, the cup of peace, the cup of redemption, and the cup of blessing. Now, it's interesting that at the Last Supper, which was a Passover Seder meal, by the way, Jesus took that 3rd cup, the cup of redemption, and that's the cup we celebrate at communion. That's the cup he used when he said, "Take this, all of you, and drink from it." So we've learned a little bit about the symbolism of the Passover Seder elements. So today I've shown you what some of those symbols mean, and I hope I've convinced you that the Passover celebration is just as much a Christian celebration as it is a Jewish one. And I was left to wonder if over 3,000 years ago, if one of these Jewish slaves said, I really love my Egyptian next-door neighbor, and man, his oldest son's about to die. I want to save him from that grief. So, maybe I should invite him over for this meal. Maybe I should convince him to sprinkle that blood on his doorposts. And I wonder, what would the angel of death have done? Would he have walked by and said, "Wait a minute, that's an Egyptian's house. No one's fooling me. I'm going to go in there and kill." And that's the worst impersonation of the angel of death. But anyway, I wonder if he would have done that. And no, that Egyptian and his family would have been saved, because we are not saved by our ethnicity, and we are not saved by our association or our affiliation with others. We are saved by the grace of God. So, do you love your neighbors enough to tell them? Wow. All right.